So here it is, here we are, the new moon in Taurus, the first syzygy after eclipse season, the first one since Mercury stationed direct, and the first one since Jupiter has moved into Taurus. So it's time to settle in here to the rest of this year and all the new stuff we've been birthed into. Big changes out from 2022 into 2023. And so now's the time to really settle into this new earthy, watery vibe, very creative, that's in place here for a little bit. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about this syzygy, the first half of the lunation, and certain transits that should be on your watch list, in my opinion. Let's go. Let's do it. So what a time it's been, hasn't it? I think this eclipse season, 2 eclipses ruled by Mars in Cancer with Mercury retrograde, was a pretty intense eclipse season after all, wasn't it? A little block oriented, delay oriented, maybe less active, a little bit challenged and difficult from the folks that I talked to. So it's worth noting that we've survived this intensification of reality, the faded inversions and changes that can come about with eclipse season. And now we're moving into this other phase. I was saying this on Twitter here recently. I think it's worth sometimes being open to whatever reality is serving. And we love astrology. I love it. I think about it all the time. It's my profession. I do it 24/7 almost. But sometimes even just attitudinally in my own mind, I like to just set it aside and try to experience reality as it is, as it appears, as it is being served, by the gods, by God, by the heavens, by whatever these powers are. And let life show me what it wants to show me. Let life tell me and show me what is manifesting and wants to be manifesting, rather than try to force overlays of astrological symbols and sort of make things happen, or I call it negative projection. That's my favorite way to understand this concept. But really you can say projection of any kind, projecting into the future with what I think it is or is going to be, using any overlay, whether astrological tools or non-astrological. Sometimes it's good to set all those overlays aside. Squeegee the third eye, as Bill Hicks said when he was making stand-up comedy about psychedelics, but just to kind of clear things a little bit and let it go and just kind of step in and feel in, the verb I like to use a lot, feel into things. And so maybe doing a little bit of that, because we've had such a dramatic moment, and this week is quite dramatic. You'll see there's this new moon, and then there's this difficult T-square a lot of people have been talking about. I'm sure those who watch a lot of astrologers here on YouTube have seen a lot of people saying the T-square. That's this week. And so to kind of just go into it, let's see what happens with a curiosity and an excitement and a non-controlling way of handling or analyzing the moment. Okay, so let's just jump right out here. Here's the new moon in Taurus. Here's the chart. I want to dive right in. The first thing to note is that it's 19 May 2023, 1553 UT. Been doing all my charts in UT now because it's easy to convert, and you can set your software to Reykjavik, Iceland. They are permanently on UTC time, so that's always a little hack here. But there in Reykjavik, you can see the chart 1553. There's the new moon in Taurus in the middle of the 29th degree. Some people are saying it's an algal eclipse, a little too far in my view. The orb with algal is just too wide for me to want to center that. It's 2 degrees or maybe even more than 2 degrees away. The main thing about the chart though, look at it, all of the planets, the traditional planets, the planets that rule signs, are in what we call night sect signs, so earth and water signs. Venus and Mars in Cancer, the moon, the sun, Mercury and Jupiter in the north node all in Taurus. And then that straggler there, you might say, Saturn bringing up the rear from Pisces, and then the south node there in Scorpio. So all 7 traditional planets are in the nodes in these night sex signs. The thing about night sex signs, they're ruled by Mars, Venus, and the moon by Sect, which is an ancient concept of rulership, how we assign responsibility over the signs, assign the planets to the responsibility over signs. And so that can tell us right away what kind of energy we're dealing with when all planets are in the signs of this sect. And here's my list: relational, body, home, internal worlds, comfort, safety, pleasures, all of the messy stuff that happens in our inner worlds and our inner lives. What do I feel, right? Tell me how you feel. I don't know how you feel. I remember going to therapy a lot when I was a kid. They would put this graph in front of me, and I had to pick my feelings out. I didn't really know how I felt. It was very helpful and very useful, but this is the kind of earth, water, sign endeavor, which is what is going on inside me, what am I sensing, what am I feeling? And it's of the nature of relationship, Mars and Venus. Those are the passions and the pleasures of relating with people. The moon is the body. This is another physical component of ourselves and our relationships. But it's the home worlds, all of the stuff that happens here, what transpires when the day's work is complete. And you come back to life outside of the workplace, outside of that public-facing reputational component. Things like nightclubs, right? People go out at the night to the club and they're dancing and they're getting into those passions. They want to feel good, want to feel pleasure as a way to rest and relax. Venus and the moon. Pleasures are Venus. Moon is the security and safety of the physical body. Our home world, we shut the door to the home. I shut that door behind me and I can come here. I take off, the clothes I was wearing in the outer world, get into things that are more comfortable. I can put my feet up. I can behave how I want to behave a little bit differently maybe than out in that outer world where it's polite. Being polite, being courteous is more of a need. And so what do I have here? The true self, the guard is let down when we start dealing with earth and water signs. These are more internal states related to comfort and security. And so when we think about this new moon moment here, Friday, midday, or in the morning in North America, or in the evening down under and in Asia, where are you at with this stuff? How are your relationships? How are you feeling? Are you comfortable? Are you safe? Is that a central component here until the next syzygy? The lunation has two halves. It's the waxing phase and then the waning phase. The new moon syzygy, the full moon syzygy, those comprise a lunation or a lunar month. And this concern for the night sect will remain until it gets reset with that next syzygy, that full moon in Sagittarius. Excited about that full moon. We'll get some fire back in the sky. So when you're considering these relational internal pleasures and letting the guard down as a imperative during this moment, look what else is going on in the chart. Flows of sextiles and trines. I mean, this is a beautiful chart. It's as beautiful of a chart that you get. And you have Cancer, those two planets, Venus and Mars, sign-based sextiles, pretty close with some of these planets, to the moon, Mercury and Jupiter, sign-based sextiles to Saturn and Pisces, and then Saturn and Pisces, of course, trining Venus and Mars. So all of the planets are flowing and in support with each other. It's not like we're left hanging here when we talk about these relational and internal explorations of comfort and sense and sensation. We actually have these energies flowing in support, like I said, together. These aspects, sextiles and trines, are of the nature of Venus and Jupiter. Venus is of the sextile aspect, Jupiter is of the trine aspect. And so you can bring in Venus and Jupiter significations just to think about the aspect structure of this syzygy. And think about those themes, hope and pleasure and optimism and truth and revelation. All of that can be contained in the moment strictly from the aspectual way of seeing in this moment. This is the other major thing, and I said this in the introduction. It's the first syzygy. It's a new moon. It's after the eclipse season, so in some ways we've now completed that. No more Scorpio eclipses. July, the nodes will change signs. But we're now into this world between eclipse seasons, 6 months. This summer can be a lot more groovy and I think settled and in some ways structured without eclipses having to bear down on us this summer. It's the first new moon syzygy after Mercury's direct station, which happened earlier in May. You can see here Mercury in this chart, 7 degrees Taurus, moving now away from the North Node and coming now to meet the Sun. They'll meet in Gemini, I believe, in June. And then you have this first new moon or syzygy post Jupiter's ingress into Taurus. What does a new moon do? It's like a strobe light, like I always say. It's the flash where you're in the club and you can see what's going on. So is a full moon. It's a way that we syncopate our astrological configurations and the energetics of the astrology. And we get the first branding, let's say, of the energy of reality with Jupiter and Taurus. And so right away, we're into all those themes. Check out my last video. Go to those timestamps, by the way. I know my videos, I'm making them a little bit longer, a little less regular, but I'm deliberately having a lot of timestamps. So you can go in and click Jupiter and Taurus, and just that's all you want to look at, and you'll have a lot of breakdown of that. I'll do more of that here too, because Jupiter's hanging out here for a year now, does not leave Taurus until May 2024, so it'll come up a lot. Every video, Jupiter is going to be interacting with whatever else is happening in the sky, and this Jupiter and Taurus energy is very important to engage, and we'll continue to engage in it as well as in this video. But it's a true fresh beginning, one of the Taurian. So that's another major theme here of this new moon moment. So again, you all know how I like to work, is I like to saturate in the symbol. I'm not as like interested in the exactitude of this calculation. I want to saturate in the symbol as the primary way that we do astrology well, because that's where the richness is. Just Taurus right now. We can just saturate in what is Taurus. And that's what I'm going to do here for a few slides, because we have to grapple with that with so much activation there. So what is the key word for Taurus? Sense. Okay, this is my work here. Sense is the key word, the verb sense. We have cognates, sensation, sensing, sensuality, or five senses. To sense. And this is where the Venus moon component of Taurus comes in, because Venus is beauty and pleasure. Venus is all of the senses, but the moon is the body. And so it's using our senses, our body, to do these things like engaging in the sensual nature of all things. You know, everything has a sensual component if we center that and deliberately engage in it. And so what I have here, it's taste, food. Good food is very Taurian. Smell, you know, the odors of reality, just being outside. You can step out here, it's been rainy, and you just smell it in the air. You smell the rain. You know, you can smell flowers. I've had fresh chamomile, I think someone pulled and put them at the coffee shop I go to, and I was smelling these fresh flowers. I mean, the sight, the touch, the sound. And that's the beautiful thing about Taurus as well, that in the Northern Hemisphere, it's that sign that's in the middle of the spring season. Spring begins upon the sun's ingress into Aries. Spring ends when the sun goes from Gemini to Cancer, but that middle sign, the fixed sign, is the middle of a season. And so this is of the spring, you might say, if we want to deepen our sense of the archetype. And what is spring? Spring is the sights. You look at the beautiful flowers. You look at all the color changes. The green is everywhere. The animals are out. The pigeons aren't singing here today, or the birds aren't here out today because it's been raining, but those sights of nature and of animals come out. We can touch things. We can hear things. All of this is the Taurian. It's the saturation in the sense faculty. What do I have here? Exploration through sensation of a space or place. And this requires deliberation. To do a true sensing of something, you have to spend time with it. That's why when they drink, and I have a tea here, so I'll do it. I've got this green tea. You see that, the aeration, that you have to pause. You can't just swallow it right away. You have to aerate. And I got that flavor. That green tea flavor was bursting as I deliberately paused and aerated it. It's the nature of the fixed sign. You stay with something to deepen into the sensation. And that is why Taurus is a fixed sign. In order to sense and properly feel, you have to not be diverting the attention, not be trying to start something new. It's pausing, waiting, feeling. I think I said resting on the laurels in the last video, but it requires this deliberation to fully appreciate what we are sensing and even sometimes feel it properly. Meditation schools, I've been a longtime practitioner of Vipassana, and it's about sitting still. That's the fixed sign, and paying attention to the sensations in the body. Very Taurian style of spirituality when you think about paying attention to the bodily sensations. And of course, Taurus, after all, is the Hierophant in the tarot. So we're dealing with a spiritual way to approach the materiality, using the material as a way into ourselves. I think can be one of the most spiritual approaches. I want to come to Dane Rudhyar. He is the master, all right? Dane Rudhyar is the master. The more I dig in, when I do these videos, I'll pull up Rudhyar and I'm blown away continually. This is from The Pulse of Life, 1943. He says that Taurus is, it seeks to establish itself in a tangible manner. That's the touch. You can physically delineate with the feeling and of touch. That's tangibility. And it learns that results are gained through repetition and through set motions, through stubborn insistence and undeviating effort. That's what I was just saying, staying with the sensation to really know something. These painters, they sit and look at a flower, a still life. you have to sit with that still life and draw it. And you have to get the light just right. I mean, it takes an insistence, a stubborn insistence to create, okay? And then what else does he say here in Taurus? Emotion aroused by objects. Again, it's the things around us that we're deepening through deliberate sensing of objects and their tangibility. So what might that mean for you? I mean, deploy some of this stuff this week, Friday, into the weekend, into this whole first phase of lunation. You know, you can get into your sense. It's great in spring, or if you're down under, you know, wherever you are, get out into the natural world. Get out around music. Get out around painting and creating, if that's your thing. Cook some food. All of this Taurian sensing, we're primed for that with this astrological energy. So here's an example from my life. This is the coffee shop, my coffee shop. Here is Venus corresponds to the color white in ancient astrological texts. This was the day that Venus ingressed into Cancer. Got a nice upgrade, day triplicity, rulership over Cancer. And I get to this coffee shop, there's my little computer, you can see it there, and I just start working, and boom, fresh lilies were placed right next to me. Venus is the color white in ancient texts, but it's an example of the natural beauty. And I had to turn and say, wow, look at those. And then I made a photograph. I wanted to deliberately engage with these senses, and then I wrote about it. You know, I was doing the Taurian. You have here, stop and smell the roses. It's so cliche, but this is the perfect phrase for the vibe, how to capture this astrological goodness. It would be to deliberately, that stop, and then engage the senses with the beauty of the world around you. In this case, the natural world, right? Earth sign, Taurus. And I have here an intentionally lackadaisical way of being. So it's giving yourself a space intentionally to be restful, and to look around and to say, yeah, that feels good, yeah. And just kind of pause with pleasure, if you're able. And I say here, this can be incorporated even with busy schedules and chaos. There's always time for 1 minute of literally get your hand, go feel the grass. I mean, on your way as you're walking, or when you get home out of your car or something like that, literally just go touch grass. This is what people say now, touch grass. That takes 30 seconds. And this would capture this energy at a very minimum. And what are the five senses doing in a given moment? This is also a great query. Like right now, I just had that green tea. I can feel a little bit of that lingering. There's a little water drip over here. I've got some art up here I really like. I'll show you that at some point. This was art. This was put here by my landlord. But I can see the trees. I mean, there's always the senses. There's my internal music in my head at all times. So what are they doing at a given moment is maybe a query into this. Coming back to the chart, it's important. Let's break it down a little bit more. The moon and Venus in this chart are in a mutual reception by domicile. The Taurus is ruled by Venus by domicile. Cancer is ruled by the moon by domicile. Mutual receptions are wonderful because the two basically team up and say, we're partners now to help each other with the tools of mine that you have access to that I know about, and then vice versa. These deals get struck by the planets when there's a mutual reception. And then the other layer is that Jupiter, as the exaltation lord of Cancer, is received by Venus, the domicile lord of Taurus. You can flip this. There's no mutual receptions can be engaged through all forms of dignity in my view, but certainly exaltation and domicile would rise to that highest level of power where you can have reception by your exaltation lord or your domicile lord. So there's another layer here of fusion between Cancer and Taurus, a partnership between Cancer and Taurus with these planetary rulers exchanging reception with each other. And here, what do I have? Nurturing requires attentiveness to sensation. So just to layer in the nurturing and the Cancerian component here, when we mentioned Taurus as sensation, but that's how we nurture well. Have you ever been in a hospice or been around someone who was under hospice care? I have a few times. I've been fortunate to be with my grandparents both when they were in hospice care at home. I was able to be around that process. And it's all about, are you comfortable? What do you need? That's how the nurturing is delivered, is through this attentiveness to the sensations of others. And, people, when they're, no, I need to get some water, or I'm hungry, or no, help me to the bathroom. These are all the things, the sensations of the body and of the needs that can be combined with Taurus and Cancer here. Now, hospice is an extreme state of reality, but you can think about just people that you love, that you're hanging out with. Hey, you need a coffee, I'm gonna get one. Are you hungry? Let me take you to get some lunch. Or here, I brought some snacks. I've got some cashews. I like cashews. Here, would you like some? I had a guy offer me earlier, he's like, would you like this little cheese snack? It was bread and cheese, these baked snacks that are here. I said, yeah, sure. It was very much a Cancerian-Taurian exchange. And I really appreciated it, you know. This is the kind of thing friends do for each other, loved ones do for each other. We check in on the sense needs of the other. Or going another way, we can share the beauties and pleasures that we are experiencing. Like, gosh, this song just took me away. I'm moved deeply by this song. Can I share it with you? Singing a song for someone, playing that, here's my guitar, get it out, let me sing for you, let me serenade you. This is all singing to a baby as a baby goes to bed. Cancer, Venus, Taurus, Moon, mutual reception. These are the kind of things that are another layer here that are highly supported by this nativity here. I was going to say by this chart of the syzygy of the new moon. Very lovely energy for this type of activity. And you can do it to strangers. There's always people wherever you are. You can ask them, hey, how are you doing? How do you feel today? One of my favorite questions. How are you feeling? How are you being? That's a new one. I'd like to maybe start deploying that. How are you being today? But it's a way to ask people about their sense needs and their sense experiences. Assist others in navigating their sense organs. So there it is. Okay, so then this final technical piece, Saturn and Pisces, contains all of it. And that's what's so almost the most beautiful thing in my view of this whole chart is that you have earlier in zodiacal order, Saturn giving an overcoming sextile and an overcoming trine. It's almost like the large container, if you can say Pisces can offer a container, that Saturn is bringing to this whole moment. And I have here, it's the trippy Saturn and Pisces, which trines from earlier in zodiacal order, sextiles from earlier in zodiacal order. Saturn relying on Jupiter, relying on Venus, received by both of those primary rulers. And so again, a lot of support for Saturn and Pisces to deepen here, expand, get much more comfortable in the trip, right? This Grateful Dead song, what a long, strange trip it's been. How Saturn and Pisces is that? The longevity of Saturn and the trippiness of Pisces. We're just settling into our Saturn and Pisces trip. It's only been 2 months. So let's settle in here, get comfortable, and now is a time where this expression of surrealism and of the unknown can really start benefiting us, I think, here in June, July, and August. And I'm coming back. I brought this record up in the last video, but I want to bring it up here again. Remember the 59-year Saturn-Jupiter cycle. Every 59 years, they return to the same two signs at the same time. And we're brought back to 1965. What was happening creatively? I want to come back to Bob Dylan. I just love Bob Dylan. I have my whole life. The album Bringing It All Back Home, released with Jupiter in Taurus, Saturn in Pisces. And these lyrics, I think, are straight on with the energy of this moment. It's from the song, Hey Mr. Tambourine Man, one of his masterpieces. And this is the chorus. Hey Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. Venus and Taurus, sensation, for me, Cancer. Right? Nurture me with the music. I'm not sleepy, there's no place I'm going to. That's the Saturn in Pisces. I'm not really even sure where I am. You know, just play me some music to nurture me in this kind of unknown trip. And then this whole verse is one of my favorites, but let me come to this first line. Then take me disappearing through the smoke rings of my mind, down the foggy ruins of time, far past the frozen leaves. That's, I think, all Saturn and Pisces stuff, deals with time and not even understanding the time or feeling like timeless. I know someone on Twitter was talking about the eclipse as a time warp. I certainly felt that a little bit. Where am I? What is happening? Getting sucked into things and then spit back out and like, what was that? You know, there's a certain bending of time that eclipses bring, but that Saturn and Pisces can also bring. And then the one thing, last little line I wanted to say here is he says, yes, to dance beneath the diamond sky with one hand waving free. Even that, it's like the beauty of the sky, the dancing movement of the body of the creative moon in Taurus. Silhouetted by the sea, circled by the circus sands with all memory and fate driven deep beneath the waves. Let me forget about today until tomorrow. So it's very much a release into the creative surrealism. It's perfect for this syzygy, this new moon in Taurus. So put this track on, or put your favorite records on that take you into strange worlds that are very creative. And when we stay on Dylan, pulling up his nativity, we've got AA rated time for Bob Dylan. It's beautiful. Mars in Pisces, night triplicity lord of Pisces, and look at all his Taurus. He's got moon in Taurus, Saturn in Taurus, Jupiter in Taurus. So he shares two placements with this new moon, but there's a reception, the Pisces being received by planets that are in Taurus, particularly domicile Lord Jupiter there. Dylan is Pisces and Taurus, and he's singing and writing about this stuff. It's kind of perfect for the moment where we have Pisces, Saturn there, and then all the Taurus stuff right here in this new moon. By the way, with Bob, he's got the trickster Gemini Mercury, very powerful evening star with Venus there with Mercury. That's where the wordplay tricksterism comes in with Bob Dylan. So that's it for the new moon analysis. Remember, the new moon energy stays with us until the next syzygy. So all of that applies. Even if you're watching this a day or two after the perfection of the new moon on Friday, this energy is still operative, technically from a point of technical astrology. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about after this new moon is the T-square. We've got to go deep into the T-square. What the T-square is, for those of you who maybe are new to this type of analysis, we have 3 planets that we're looking at. Pluto in Aquarius is opposite Mars in Leo, and then Jupiter in Taurus makes a darn close square to both. And so it looks like a T. It's 2 squares, and then they're teed off by those other planets being in opposition. Astrologers look to this as a very tense aspect. This is one that can be highly tense, highly combustive, and highly productive at the same time because it forces action and forces change. So just some quick delineations here. Well, actually, first I'm just going to say, well, when is it happening? It's a little bit strange because Jupiter is in Taurus as I record this, already squaring Pluto. That square is perfecting tomorrow, the Jupiter-Pluto square, and this video will hopefully be released. I think it's right around the time of that perfected square. Mars isn't even in Leo for that. And so arguably Mars being in a water cardinal sign, this is not aspecting the fixed signs. So it might not be that the T-square even begins until I think it really begins, no matter how you slice it. Mars entering Leo on 20 May. This is really when it's going to start combusting. Because Mars is now in a fire sign, it's now applying to oppose Jupiter by sign as well as by degree, and is applying to square Pluto by sign as well as by degree. So this T-square peaks all week, and it peaks after the new moon. We basically are right into this T-square moment of this highly tense and highly charged moment. The high-level summary is that it's after this new moon we get into the most combustive applying moment here for the T-square. Now, what is it? Mars and Leo, double fire. Mars is the fire planet in the fire sign. Fighting for known sense of self. Leo is a sense of self, and Mars can be the passion that we express from that place of self. And even fighting. I can see here with the tension that maybe we're having to defend who we are or defend who we think we are. Ego defense would be a component with just Mars and Leo. Opposite Pluto and Aquarius, that means there's direct tension with the deep innovations in technology, the truth of collectivism versus individualism, where those two things rub together and then some kind of truth is produced. I don't know what's happening in your world or collectively where you are, but there's all kinds of stuff going on. Where are you at with processing the news cycle? The election stuff is building up. This could be just tenseness as there's an engagement in these collective turns, the technology, all of it that I've talked about a lot in so many videos. So that's, to me, this kind of Mars and Leo, Pluto and Aquarius tension. Then Jupiter and Taurus, revelations about money, resources, and beauty. And then you have the North Node with that Jupiter is appetites of fate. So putting all of this together, it's kind of like, maybe we're dealing with, it feels very resource-based to me, and power over resources and kind of asserting a selfhood to, defend what one might think is theirs kind of thing. That's my short delineation here, and you can just think about how that might be applying in your specific context. Of course, with all of these videos, I'm doing transit to transit delineation, but you have a chart. It's all happening in your chart in a specific way that I can't speak about here because I don't have your chart. And even if I did, I wouldn't do a public chart delineation. It's just not the container for it. So what I try to do here is transit to transit. Some of that's going to apply no matter where it is in your chart. Some of this delineation will likely. So on the T-square, a few points of mundane astrology I want to get us into. Biden's nativity. Right away I was tweeting about this. Biden's moon is 0 Taurus. First degree of Taurus. So that moon is getting hit by Jupiter in the North Node and squared exactly by Mars and Leo, near Biden's Pluto, and that all then squares his natal Scorpio stellium, which is the core of his chart. So there's heavy duty pressure here on Biden's chart. There was a story here on May 8th. There was possible charges against his son. The Guardian was reporting. The thing why that's interesting is that in Biden's chart, Mars rules his 5th house of children. Mars then rules his 12th house of challenge and obstacle. So that's kind of being shown here is very, very interesting. And then this T-square involves transit Mars squaring his natal Mars. So there's a lot of Mars stuff for Biden. I don't think this issue, it hasn't done anything yet. It's hard to think that it's somehow going to take him down or something like this. Probably a nothing burger. I mean, part of it is that Mars is very powerful in Biden's chart in his 12th house. It allows him to defend and fight against enemies, that he has a strong 12th house ruler. And that's probably what's happening, is that it's triggered, it's giving him issues, but he'll likely be able to defend it, is my guess. Next, my friend Astro Crypto Guru, Crypto Damus from Twitter, he's brought up this really interesting point about the last time Jupiter went into Taurus in 2011 was this debt ceiling standoff and the US credit downgrade. And he's just showing charts here. I remember this well. My employer at the time, I had to do a lot of stock research for him. I remember watching it. They downgraded, I think it was Moody's or something, and it just crashed the stock market. That was right as Jupiter came into Taurus. And if you just type debt ceiling into Brave News, this is the big story. Stocks are falling because of debt ceiling worries. Debt ceiling talks in focus. There is a scheme to protect McCarthy from debt ceiling revolt. All kinds of debt ceiling negotiations are front and center just as Jupiter's coming to Taurus. So if that has another version, a similar echo, look for those tensions around the T-square. Remember, it's monetary in the sense that Aquarius can be money-oriented and banks and structures of money. Jupiter and Taurus can be all about just the materiality, which money often gives us access to and is directly connected to. Mars can break and shake. And so look for this theme during this T-square. It's this coming weekend and into next week. And then finally, I want to just point out the Jupiter-Mars squares. That's the 23rd of May. On Tuesday it perfects, but it'll be applying as soon as Mars enters Leo on Saturday the 20th. They can be very literal. I've seen a few of these. There was one when Jupiter was in Capricorn, Mars was in Aries, and there was like literal red bombs and fires. And I mean, I think that was that summer, and there was like some explosion accident that went off, was all over Twitter. They can be very combustive and literal. And Mars in fiery Leo, so double fire, Jupiter in the Earth sign Taurus, like fire on the Earth, coming up from the Earth. And these are two stories that I've seen all over my timeline. Of course, this is happening a lot these days. In Ukraine, there was an arms depot that was struck, and you saw videos of these explosive arms depots. I've seen some that were in Russia that were struck. So there's been a lot of explosions recently. And so I'm just thinking there could be some real combustiveness related to the war. Remember, this square between Mars and Jupiter has been operative since Mars entered Cancer at 25 March, because Jupiter was also in Aries. So by sign, they've been squaring. These tensions of Mars and Jupiter have been squaring, growing combustion. But Mars was a lot weaker in Cancer, watered down. When Mars comes to Leo, this is a big, big thing to watch. How kinetic will it all get when you have double fire Mars and Leo? Mars has been subdued for a long, long time, and this ingress into Leo on Saturday the 20th does change that quite significantly. There's been talk of these new offensives on both sides, so keep that on your radar with this T-square in this week. All right, one final slide on this T-square. I just want to say tensions of the square are productive tensions, ultimately. Squares and oppositions force action, like I said earlier. Just remember that. If your life is really tense right now, talking to a friend here, she's like, yeah, things are really tense. When does it stop, SJ? When's it going to be over? And I was saying this T-square, even though the new moon arrives, we're after eclipse season, Mercury's direct, Jupiter's in Taurus, this T-square is a pocket of tension that we settle right into. Once this is over, I think we'll get this more pure Jupiter and Taurus, Saturn and Pisces chill out time. So just hold on. Hold on into June and into July, this 6 weeks period before Venus stations retrograde. Really can be some Jupiter and Taurus, Saturn and Pisces chill out time in my view. I think it'll get a lot easier for a lot of folks out there. And when I say wait, I just mean, hang on, life's crazy. Life is insane. Things come up, we get triggered, our deep issues come up, and if we're out of control and we may, what they call spiral or spin out of control mentally or emotionally, or we're so busy, no time to breathe. I mean, whatever that is that you're having to brave or endure, Just, hang on would be my advice. See what it's like. And I'm going to show you some of these elections in a second. Some of the best ones that we've had in a long, long time. This energy, I think, really does settle, at least symbolically. 20 May, Mars enters Leo. The next day, the Sun enters Gemini on 21 May. It's worth us taking a step back. Remember, Mars was in Gemini for over 7 months, a full retrograde cycle, 20 August until 25 March. That's 7 months or more staying and hanging around in delayed Mars. And then you had Mars in Cancer, 25 March until 20 May, of this watered down Mars where the action's more home-oriented and internalized, not quite what Mars prefers. And before that, you had Mars in Taurus. Mars entered Taurus 5 July 2022. That's a sign where Mars is also subdued. So it's been a long time, over 10 months, before Mars has been unleashed to fully go full Mars. Full action, full power, full activity. And in Leo, it might be too much. That's the risk of Mars in Leo. It's the fire sign with the fire planet, like I've said. So Mars gets unleashed here in a way where we have to be very careful to temper its powers. I mean, you may want to watch anger, self-righteous anger, justified anger. Those things can be like drugs that, when they're not tempered or contained, can really do damage. I've been seeing some videos online of like torches. You can just torch stuff. Just like no holds barred, take no prisoners, start torching with Mars and Leo. And so I would just encourage you to think about anger as a poison. I was watching a film last night. I wish I could remember the name of this movie. It was a really cool, this picture, She Is Love, a British film. It was this love story, and I think it is a line in this movie, if I'm recalling correctly. The lead character was like, my mom told me that if I'm angry, I'm drinking the poison that kills me when I'm angry at someone else. And I think there's something to that we kind of hurt ourselves when we let anger fester and control our mental and emotional states. Certainly some anger can be deployed and is useful, but it can pretty easily sometimes cross a line into real negativity and real damaging emotional states. And that's the risk with Mars and Leo. It's anger about my identity, that I've been wronged. And so I'm going to start taking people out, with whether that's vociferous language or, invective, written invective, whatever I would do. So to come back. The technical astrological point is that Mars comes into Leo and is now ripe with an ability to access these fiery sides of martial energy. And it'll be hanging out here until July. Back to Rudhyar. I want to come back to the same writer here, genius Dane Rudhyar. What is Mars? Because Mars takes center stage here, this half of the lunation, let's saturate into the symbol of Mars and the core concept. When I pulled this up, the New Mansions for New Men text, I haven't read this in a long time, and I look at what Rudhyar wrote about Mars. He who goes forth. He who goes forth. And then what I've highlighted here is to move away, to go toward, to reproduce. He got it. He hit it right on the head with how I look at Mars. There's certainly sex. That's an ancient attachment to Mars, has been all the way back. Don't let astrologers dissuade you. Mars is sex. It signifies all kinds of sex, usually the too much passionate side of sexual activity. So it's to reproduce, to go toward, or to move away. And so my key is this going forth or moving out from is how I understand the core of Mars, to break free or to break away. And what do I have here? These are my words. To move out from, to break free, passion, and it's moving from and with passion. See, when our passions are inflamed, we take action usually. Inflamed passions generate almost unconscious reflexive action. And that's why Mars can be dangerous, because if it's too inflamed and too passionate, you think later, you act now, and often those can be dangerous, states to be in. But a highly controlled and martial person that has a very strong Mars, they will incorporate all that in real time. The instinct and the action just is aligned in such a way that the passion can be quite pleasurable even, and can capture the goals that have been calculated almost instinctually. Mars forces the action based on passion. Instinct that, if untamed, can harm, especially based on entrenched, calcified identities. And I think that's the Leo. And so I would check yourself. That's just my advice to you. I'm going to check myself. Check the self. especially if you're feeling a lot of renewed power with this Mars in Leo and you're out like, I love this. You may want to just be like, okay, yeah, are there others around you? How is it affecting the people in your sphere? That would be a way to sort of check Leo and check Mars and Leo. Just check in with people a little bit. Use the Venus in Cancer. It will remain in Cancer until 5 June, this whole half of the lunation. That Venus in Cancer can be, and Jupiter in Taurus, they will retain that mutual reception all the way through the next full moon. And so we can rely on everything I talked about earlier, the nurturance by checking in around sensation, to check this untamed, martial, entrenched self and the risks of that. The great power of it is if there's a clarity around self, finally we get to act, and you might do some wonderful things. Kicking off your 20 May with Mars and Leo, you might feel finally it's go time. Go with it, go with it. I'm not trying to negative project here about this Mars and Leo. So some more into this Mars in Leo, Sun in Gemini, which is the major signature that we're now entering into, this sign-based sextile, Mars and Leo. And you can just see it here. Here's Mars and Leo. It's now ruled by the Sun in Gemini, and they are, they're bound together. Mars needs the Sun. And so when I talk about these unleashed, calcified self, where we have this untamed passion, think about your Gemini powers, your mercurial powers as a way to tame. And as I was saying earlier, like checking the instinct and the passion, a great way to do it is through the written word and the verbalism. Therapy, talk therapy. Just talking to someone here, like my therapist, I love my therapist. It doesn't have to be a paid professional relationship, just whoever you can check in with. I remember an old friend of mine in Austin used to call me all the time, can I run something by you? It's one of my favorite things about him, because he would call me and, yeah, you can run something by me, I'm your friend. What's going on? I've got 5 minutes, tell me about it. These verbal check-ins can keep us balanced with these inflamed passions. And I love that the Sun is in Gemini, receiving Mars and Leo during this period. What do I have here? Using language and curiosity to scrutinize the self that we're leading with. Curiosity and scrutiny, giving things a pass through our curiosities and our scrutinies. That's what Mercury is so good for and Gemini is so good for. Double, triple checking, more questions, more kind of verbal banter, and more scrutiny is probably the best noun here. What does it mean? Why am I doing this? That can provide a layer or a buffer from that instinctual passionate action. We can buffer it, maybe like a 5-minute pause to think or write about something, or to check in with someone, like I said. And this is the challenge. It's with all of this, because you also are dealing with the Sun being squared by Saturn. You can see that. This is a little bit more of a tough aspect for the Sun in Gemini. As we're trying to scrutinize with curiosity, it's like, well, what about Saturn in Pisces? It's going to have to be reckoned with. And that's why I have this last paragraph here. It's curiosity that can lead nowhere or is overwhelming. It's just lost in the sauce of the scrutiny and the curiosity. And it's like, F it, I can't deal with this mental anxiety or this mental analysis. So there's just, let me get in the bathtub, or let me just say, I don't care. These kind of Piscean rejections as a result of being overwhelmed emotionally, or the scrutiny not being as productive. And it can be a seduction. So powers of seduction and unreality may be taking over here. And that's the dance of this whole season. It's Sun in Gemini, square Saturn in Pisces. And it's not an easy thing to manage. I would just say you might want to be like, all right, get out of the bathtub, try to write these pages. I think here about the writer, the creative writer who's got a deadline or an article deadline. I've written some astrology journal articles with a deadline. It's one of the worst things I've ever done. The articles were great. I loved the final product. But having to write under a deadline, you talk about wanting to escape. I hate deadlines. I have a Mercury in Pisces, and it's like escaping deadlines. You can then get, lost into the eat my way through the deadline or whatever other fantasy I want to just get lost in. And that's a tough tension. One of my strategies when I was facing stuff like that is just to not acknowledge it. Like, use the Gemini. Like, I acknowledge this is hard. I acknowledge this is not fun. I acknowledge what the deadline is. I acknowledge the word count. I can just acknowledge it using the noting powers of Gemini. So that's a component here with this Sun-Saturn square, Saturn in Pisces, Sun in Gemini, that will be challenging. But then quite productive, because if you can pull from the imaginative realms and then come back and get it onto the page or get it into the verbalized expression, That's amazing. I mean, that's Dylan. He has Mars and Pisces squaring Mercury and Venus in Gemini. Again, go back to Dylan. It's like capturing it on the page. It was a way to use the tension of that square. So more on this. I'm going to stay on this because this defines this half of the lunation, this energy of Sun, Mars and Leo, Sun and Gemini, Saturn and Pisces. It's the defining astro signature. So I want to say more about it. This film, have you seen this? Memento, 2000, Christopher Nolan. You got to watch it if you haven't seen it. It's a crazy movie. It's insanely surreal. I mean, it is as Saturn and Pisces as you can get. Saturn was in Taurus, I believe, in 2000, entering Taurus and right there with Jupiter and Taurus in 2000. They actually conjoined. It was the two great conjunctions ago. But the protagonist has this disease. He can't remember anything a few minutes before. And so he's constantly trying to write things down to retain memory. And I feel like it's perfect for the Sun in Gemini. It's using the written form to help the self. He relies on notes, Polaroid photos, but tattooing. That's what I always loved. He's tattooing his body. He tattoos his important information on his body so he can remember it. And it's this perfect, I think, metaphor for Sun in Gemini, Mercury in Taurus. That's the art of the writing on the body. That's the Taurian. Sun in Gemini to help with the Sun identity with that Piscean square from Saturn, the memory, and I don't know where I am, and let me write it down on the body. So it's a perfect expression, I think, of the tensions here. Maybe we can't remember. Where am I? Who am I? What is this? How do I know? Well, let me use the language to figure it out. Let me maybe use some art to express express an answer to these queries or concerns. Great picture, and I think a perfect one for this energy, like I said. And then I want to come in here with a work of art. This was on my wall as a kid. My parents had this print, Salvador Dali, The Persistence of Memory. I spent a lot of time looking at this thing as a kid. Particularly, my favorite part of it are the ants crawling on the pocket watch in the bottom left, this orange pocket watch with these ants on it. And I remember being obsessed with that as a kid. But if you just take a step back, look at it. It's clocks that are morphed and bent, hanging from trees. It's almost, there's a sea in the background. It's very Taurian and Piscean with the natural world, the air and water. And then these clocks are just hanging around. Bending time, the strangeness of reality, Mercury and Taurus overlaying the way that we filter time through a systemization, that would be Mercury, we overlay that into nature. And I say here, time loses its powers. Order gives way to strange, dissipated beauty. How is the past real? Well, we reproduce it in the present. That's how the past remains real. I mean, history's strange. It's a living thing. It's always unknown in a certain way. We have to rely on text. And that's what the job of an historian is they analyze text and they say, well, this is what our theory about history. You see that a lot in historical schools. Here's the theory we have about it. And the farther we get away, the more it's just theoretical. So history is this weird, it's Saturn and Pisces, right? Saturn is the ancient, and in Pisces is the morphed creative, the unknown. And so that's what I think we're kind of navigating ultimately through with Saturn and Pisces earlier in zodiacal order from everything right now, is still navigating these strange states of the unknown and the beauty that comes out of that, the beauty that's produced from acknowledging these dreamlike states. Get your dream on, get your dreaming on, you're daydreaming, you're walking, going nowhere. What does Dylan say? I'm not sleepy and there is no place I'm going to. Do some of that this summer and this particular period. Get into it, because the astrological symbols are pointing us to this model or way of being. So deploy it if you can, if you're able to. And what I have here, squares are productive and can be leading us to new vistas, right? It's like Saturn, Sun in Gemini, Saturn in Pisces, that square, that mutable square. What is this? Who am I? I can't tell. I don't know. It's leading you somewhere. It's leading us somewhere. Okay, this is what I am. Yeah, it's right here on my body. I can look at it. This is what I was. I go back to my old journals. Wow, that's what I was. Go to your pictures. On Twitter, it's so popular now. I was seeing a real popular tweet concept. Here's the picture of me with Saturn and Pisces, and all of these people showing, this is what I was 30 years ago. This is who I was. Now, what am I? I don't know. But there's ways that we can maybe produce a new way of seeing and come to some kind of deeper understanding. I mean, hell, this painting is so potent and powerful. That alone is a new vista, right? Dali broke ground. the surrealist innovation of Dali. I know he's got a nativity. I didn't put it in this chart, but last night I was going to sleep. I was like, what's going on in Dali's chart? Not going to get it up. Maybe I'll do it later. Finally, election time. 2 amazing elections. Use these, use these, use these. I'm almost so strongly excited about these 2 charts. I'm like, these are elections, use them. But of course, a pure astrological election, you need to ground it in local space and time. And that's different for everywhere in the world. And there's certain factors you have to take into account that you can't just say, use this election, because it's impossible to know. I mean, I've got a chart up for Budapest, Hungary. It's not going to work for Tokyo. It's going to be totally different. But let's come in. But these are so cool. These 2 charts are so amazing. And like, use these, use these, use these. Okay, election 1, Moon, Venus conjunction in Cancer, mutually received by Jupiter. This is the 23rd of May, 2023, that Tuesday. It's after Mars and Jupiter are now separating. Moon in Cancer will oversee the Jupiter-Mars square. But this Cancer moon is just, say, stellar. Pun intended, I guess. It's an amazing, amazing moon. The moon is the domicile lord of Cancer. Venus is the triplicity lord by day of Cancer. Both of the moon and Venus rule Taurus by exaltation and domicile respectively, where Jupiter is sextiling back, the exaltation lord of Cancer. So all of that reception that we talked about at the beginning that's in the new moon chart is here too. And then you have here the waxing moon. This might be the best part of it all. It's a young, visible waxing moon, perfect for growing things. The symbolic waxing phase. And look where this moon is. It's safe from Mars, averse to Mars. It is safe from Saturn, trining Saturn. So there's a water trine. It is safe from the lunar nodes. The lunar nodes are in fixed signs. This is a cardinal moon. These are the 3 primary things I look for in election. Is the moon safe from Saturn, Mars, and the nodes? Safe from hard aspect. Goes back into ancient texts. I have videos on my channel that goes into all that. Older videos. And so you have this safe moon in its own domicile, mutually received by Jupiter. And all of the deep nurturance themes that I already discussed at the beginning of this talk apply here. You know, this would be perfect. Launch your beauty care business, launch your website. I'd say launch anything. You know, I mean, this would be the launch go time chart. And it's a great fresh start initiation out of the gate of eclipse season and post-Mercury retrograde. That's what's even most potent about it, is that all of those things that we say, wait on, don't act, those are all gone now. And now you can act. And here's the perfect chart to do it, potentially. I elected to have the moon in the 10th with Venus near the midheaven. In this chart in Budapest, they're all in the same degree, the 18th degree of Cancer. That's a beautiful, powerful blend, and you can get the rising sign, Libra rising, so that Venus, the domicile lord of Libra, is right in the 10th house. Amazing, amazing chart. The one caveat I would say, if I were to change this back a little bit, I would want to maybe get the moon applying to Venus, though they're still in the same degree in this chart. Maybe try to get a chart a little bit earlier with the moon making an application to Venus. That might even be the most potent that you can get, even if you lose a degree or 2 from the midheaven. Okay, and then this second election, Moon-Venus mutual reception part 2. You have the Moon-Venus mutual reception in the new moon chart. Moon in Taurus, Venus in Cancer, domicile mutual reception. You get a second mutual reception between the moon and Venus here on 31 May, Wednesday, 4:30 in the afternoon, Budapest, Central European time. And look at it, moon applying to Jupiter by degree. It's within a degree of an application. It's within 20 degree minutes. And the moon is in Libra in those Egyptian terms of Venus. I see this chart. I've got Mars with the MC in Leo. I would probably move this back, and I would get the MC closer to Venus, get the MC in Cancer, and the ascendant still close to the moon. Just a point of editing here. But it's more of the same with the focus on more serious, structured way of things. That's what Libra is. It's a more heady, intellectual, outer world focused energy. So at the beginning of the talk, we're talking about the senses and the internal form of exploring the senses to nourish and nurture. When you get to Libra, it's the outer world focus of the senses. So it's like the aesthetic of a space, and you're describing with people, how should we design a building, for example. That would be perfect Libra. We're going to have an exhibition. Let's get the artists together for a talk and have a panel where we discuss the art in a group exhibition. That would be more Libra rather than Taurus. Libra's an air sign, ruled by Mercury, by night triplicity, ruled by Saturn. So it's serious conversational components to Libra. So with the moon there, that adds that component. I know a person on Twitter, I'm not going to say her name, there was a wedding for this chart. I mean, this would be perfect. Saturn is the perfect energy for Libra in a wedding, right? But you get the moon, Venus mutual reception, again, a waxing moon, safe from Mars, safe from Saturn, safe from the lunar nodes. It's all here in this chart. I have here Saturn and Pisces influences via rulership, the final days of this Venus-Saturn water trine, which is the creative surrealism around maybe more lunar themes, the matrix of Cancer being supported and deepening the surreality. So this is the final days of that, which I like. Hope in the unknown, moving into these times with hope, vision, and creativity. And that's my kind of Saturn and Pisces mantra. I'm going to be talking about this all the time in my videos. Hope in the unknown, moving into that would be the Venus trining Saturn. It's hope and the unknown structures and the exploration. And of course, both Pisces and Cancer are creative. Maybe Pisces more than Cancer in a certain way, but they're certainly both strong, have components that creativity is derived from strongly. All right, that's it. Thanks for being here. A lot to talk about. I know a lot of breakdown here in this video, but that's okay. Like again, use those timestamps. I know a lot of you don't want to listen to 40 minutes or however long this is going to be, 50 minutes. It's okay. Just you can click your timestamps, plug and play as needed. I'm considering, I still have my election video. I know I've said that now twice without releasing it, but I was waiting for Mercury to go direct, and I've just been thinking more about it and kind of saturating him with it. When you make a prediction or you engage in astrological prediction, sometimes it's good to really double and triple check and kind of think about the quality of the technique. But I'm planning on releasing that. But other than that, have a wonderful post-eclipse season, a wonderful lunation, kicked off by this Taurus syzygy, the new moon there, and enjoy your creativity and your fire and your passion and all the stuff we talked about here. Website, sjanderson144.com. Go there, check out my reading schedule. It's all there. Write me with questions, and I will talk to you very, very, very soon. Peace, take care,